So apologies to those that had dialed in and heard me talking yesterday and have to hear me talk again today. Lynn, unfortunately, had to drop out due to client meetings, so I stood in last minute. So you have me again. So welcome everybody to our Pride in Property conversation with the Proud Trust, an LGBT plus youth charity that provides life-enhancing and life-saving services to young LGBT plus people. I'm Luke Ives, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm really proud to be here as a supporter of the Proud Trust, as a trustee, as a volunteer, and as a proud mentor. I'm also Social Value and I&D Coordinator at Jacobs, and I sit on the Building Equality Executive Committee. So as I said, I'm really proud to bring this session to you today. I have a really deep personal affinity with the Proud Trust. They provide a real sense of belonging, not only to their young people, but to their staff and their volunteers. The Proud Trust to me epitomises community, and they've really stepped up to support our community during this difficult and unprecedented time. And with that in mind, for me, it's really important that we return that support to these charities. Many have lost their funding and campaigning opportunities due to the cancellation of physical Pride events. So throughout the 2 weeks of Pride in Property, we're raising money for the Proud Trust, Mind Out and Mermaids. I'll put the link in the chat section shortly, and it'd be great if any of you could donate, no matter how big or small, it'll make a huge difference. So just to run through what we're going to be doing, there'll be a 20-30 minute Q&A between myself and Ali from the Proud Trust before opening up to questions from you. Before we begin, I'm just going to show you a short video, and afterwards Ali will do introductions.
LGBT+, sometimes LGBTQ+, means lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and other related identities, such as asexuality and intersex, and people who are questioning their sexuality or gender identity.
Few people know that 1 in 10 young people and children identify as LGBT+.
We are a growing generation experiencing widespread exclusion and discrimination.
73% of young trans people have made serious suicide attempts.
Over 2/3 of LGBT+ people have experienced hate crime or been bullied at home, on the streets, or in school.
Over half of young LGBT people self-harm.
1 in 10 young LGBT people are forced to leave home as a result of coming out to their family, leaving them vulnerable to exploitation, homelessness, and a poor quality of life.
There are high incidences of drug and alcohol misuse in LGBT+ people and underage smoking.
The Proud Trust helps young people like us to help ourselves nurture our identities and show us how to challenge homophobia, biphobia and transphobia.
The Proud Trust is a life-saving charity supporting 11,000 lesbian, gay, bisexual and trans children and young people from Greater Manchester and across the Northwest.
The Proud Trust shows us how to have fun and make friends, as well as gain confidence, skills, and develop social and political awareness.
Proud Trust offers lots of different services to help children and young LGBT+ people like us through.
That was lovely. Do you know that film was made maybe a year and a half ago, so it's really nice to see the setting in which it was filmed a little bit. We'll talk about later. So hi everybody, my name is Ali. I use she and her pronouns, and I have the absolute pleasure of working for the Proud Trust, which is England's largest LGBT+ young people and children's charity. So that doesn't mean that we're huge. All it means is that there aren't many LGBT+ young people and children's charities in the country, but we do have quite a large spread. We have lots of networks that span the whole of England and also across Wales, Scotland, Ireland, and also the islands of the UK as well. So we're very much based in Manchester, and we currently run about 18 to 20 youth groups across Greater Manchester, Cheshire, and we have a network of LGBT youth groups and projects across the Northwest as well. So we're up to date with what's happening with our colleagues in the region too. We do lots of education and training work, so we offer training for professionals in schools, in health, at universities, and we also have an award called the Rainbow Flag Award, and that's currently working in lots of different schools across England to make sure that LGBT inclusion is across the whole school and not just part of a PSHE curriculum. We develop lots of resources, lots of activities, lots of events. We have professionals conferences and also events and lots of Pride events, as Luke mentioned as well, during this season, which unfortunately now many have been cancelled or made digital. And my individual role at the Proud Trust is actually to manage the LGBT plus community centre, and Manchester is the only city in Europe to have a purpose-built gay community centre, which was opened in 1988, and we'll talk a little bit about that later as well. So that's me.
What a lovely introduction. And I think, you know, Ali's explanation has maybe even understated the amount of work the Proud Trust do. So if you all want more information, I'd recommend, you know, go to the website and see all the crazy amount of wonderful stuff that they do. And I guess what we'd be interested to know, Ali, is how you got involved with the Proud Trust and the LGBT plus Centre.
So I've been managing the LGBT plus Centre for 7 years this month, so it's my anniversary, my work anniversary this month. But I was actually involved probably about 10 to 12 years ago, and I was working for a local authority, and at that time that local authority didn't have any LGBT youth project, so I would signpost people to the Manchester groups. It was a Merseyside authority I was working for. So there was no groups happening in that locality, so I would very cleverly start kind of picking out the young people I was working with and thinking, I think you're probably trans, or I think you're a young lesbian, or you seem to be fancying that lad. So I would kind of gaydar these young people I was working with and then kind of give them information about the groups that ran in Manchester. So I would start to volunteer at those groups, bring some of the young people I was supporting along to the Manchester groups, and then slowly just kind of picked up a few hours here and there and would help with some of their training in the early days. And then just increasingly, as the charity started to grow and develop, there was an opportunity to manage the LGBT Centre, and I took that on in 2013. I was interviewed for that, and that started just on 2 days a week. It was a really small role, just kind of trying to cobble together who was using the space, the relationship with the council, and how we could continue to open the doors to more and more people. And kind of over that 7 years, that role's developed quite significantly.
So you talk about opening the doors to more and more people. I guess, why is it important that young people can go through that door and have that safe space to go to?
Do you know, I think it's really interesting reflecting back, you know, somebody who's not far off 40 came out kind of over 20 years ago in a really, really rural place, and thinking about what it was like for me then and what it's like for me now. And things are better for me, but we need to continually remind ourselves that for young people and children now, things are unfortunately still quite negative. And the film showed that people do still make attempts at their life. They do engage in self-harm, problematic alcohol, drug use, smoking, that kind of thing. So we've moved on in some stages in society. So yes, there's things like equal marriage, there's adoption rights, but unfortunately there is still quite a long way to go in terms of public attitude. And we see that day in, day out with the young people we work with. So it is really important to have a place where people could connect, feel part of a community. And certainly when I started working at the Proud Trust, it was the first organisation that I worked for that was an LGBT organisation, where I didn't have to worry about being a lesbian, I didn't have to worry about being out, I didn't have to worry about how I presented my gender. All of that is really welcomed and celebrated. And that's what it's like for the young people that come to us. They walk through the door and almost you can see a kind of relief, you know, you can see people start to relax and like a big exhale, it's fine. It doesn't matter what name you use, what pronouns you want us to use, how you dress, what you look like. You're going to be kind of embraced and loved and cared for in that space. So yeah, it's still a really vital place for young people to go.
Yeah, no, and I'd sort of agree on that it's like a safe haven just outside the city centre of Manchester, and you can see what joy that ugly building gave to people.
That's me already.
But I guess it's been a really strange time, hasn't it, where people haven't been able to go through the door. So how do you think sort of COVID-19 and lockdown has affected your young people that use the centre, and what have you done to, I guess, caveat that?
Yeah, so in March we went to working from home. We made sure that all of our youth work staff knew how to use one main virtual platform. Then we asked them to make sure that all their young people knew how to use that platform so that they could then operate all of their youth groups online. So that took a couple of weeks of bedding in, and then our youth workers have just been amazing at kind of creatively looking at how they can use online tools to engage their young people. In May, we took a snapshot survey of our young people and what their experiences have been like during lockdown. Unfortunately, it doesn't make for pleasant reading. So about 23% of those young people have increased their levels of self-harming. There's been an increase in experiences of discrimination and homophobia, biphobia and transphobia from within their own families. They have also had increase in money worries, and a lot of them now are having worries about what September and October might bring. So a lot of our young people will desperately move away from home and go to university as a way to move away from the discrimination in their families or their communities. And that's just not a part of the reality for young people at the moment. There's also been things like a real reduction in physical activity and exercise, and that's, I think a lot of people are talking about mental health and the fallout there, but also one of the things we're now looking at is how we can kind of increase some of that physical activity virtually as well, because a lot of people are sitting on laptops or tablets or phones to engage. The other flip side that we've done to that is that the LGBT Centre itself is open to a broader range of groups, so adult groups and broader community groups as well. So again, we took a snapshot survey. People said that they really missed being connected, being somewhere where they felt appreciated and they could meet up with their partners. It might be the only safe place that they can meet their partner. So we put on a big virtual programme of really exciting events. So now we're running about 2 or 3 additional events a week to bring together as many people as possible. And the really nice thing about that is it's created an opportunity for people to connect in new and different ways. So we've had people from Mexico, Thailand, somebody from Florida. We've had lots of allies as well. So we've had about 20% of people accessing those events who don't identify as LGBT+. So my sister, for example, from Anglesey has been joining our cook-alongs. We've been doing some cook-alongs. We've got one this evening. And yeah, so we've just got kind of friends and families as well who, because we can't see each other in real life, they're like, oh, well, Ali's doing that thing for work. So they're just joining us. So on Monday, we've got a drag makeup tutorial. Luke, you did inclusive bingo a couple of weeks ago, so that was really good fun.
I did, bingo lingo.
Bingo lingo, exactly. What was your favourite number? Do you remember? What was your favourite rhyme?
Oh, God, some of them were so bad, weren't they?
They weren't bad, they were amazing, Luke.
What was it, number 1 got 1?
My personal favourite was 11 DeGeneres.
Oh, yeah, oh.
I feel so proud of that. So yeah, so it's been a mixed bag. One other kind of interesting thing, I guess, is that some young people who live rurally have moved away, who are studying abroad, they have been able to now access the groups. So that's been really positive. So we've had one of our old volunteers from our community cafe, he's studying in Denmark at the moment in Copenhagen, so he was able to join with us. And we've also got a young person who's studying abroad in Japan, and they've also been able to join us as well. So it has created some opportunities, but the kind of overall picture is sadly not a very positive one.
Yeah, no, it's obviously quite a tough time for communities, and you really sort of, what I do, think about those young people that are maybe stuck at home with LGBT phobic parents and stuff, and how they can't really get that release. I guess what's the workaround around that for us or for you? That, how are you supporting those individuals?
Yeah, so immediately we did a kind of risk assessment of all our young people. So we looked at just doing them into red, amber, green. So how at risk are they from quite significant detrimental impact on being locked at home, if you like, in lockdown. So we assessed them, and then each of our youth work coordinators organised one-to-ones with them. So that could be via instant chat, email, telephone calls, video calls like this. And then our team of proud mentors, of which you're one, again, have started to pick up one-to-ones for those young people who've been assessed as kind of having the lower need. They need somebody, a positive role model, somebody who's encouraging, somebody who's got some life experience and knows that things can sometimes get better, ways to coach them into maybe their next life opportunities or chances, or maybe kind of thinking about aspirations for them and just feeling a bit more connected. And we also have some counsellors. So our counsellors have got, I think we've got something like 200 hours of counsellors at the moment of their support, and that those two counsellors have been allocated some of those young people that have a kind of higher level of need. Unfortunately, then there is also the kind of young people, although the numbers are few, thankfully, at the moment, but those who do need immediate out of hours and emergency support. So that might be access to psychiatric facilities or to A&E or to crisis response as well. So we're obviously very, very well connected with those services across the region, and we'll signpost to those if and when we need them to as well.
So yeah, it sounds like we sort of discussed that, you know, COVID and the implications, the fallout of it has been a huge challenge for you to respond to. And I guess, what are the further challenges that are maybe going to implement you going forward into the year and into next year? You know, what are you going to have to face and overcome?
So at the moment, I'm doing a lot of, I've never been on the government website so much. So I'm doing a lot of research about all the different updated guidance on how you can open premises, risk assessments for working with groups. And we're just kind of being really slow and careful and wanting to ensure that we can open if and when it's possible for us to open. We're looking at having some kind of celebration events towards the end of August when the Manchester big weekend would have taken place. So looking at trying to do something specific for that. We're continuing with our virtual offer, but looking forward to the future, we know that, like I said, education, training and employment opportunities are going to be reduced for young people. And these are LGBT young people who have probably already had breaks in education or opportunities because of LGBT phobia has caused them to have not be at school as much. So we know that that's coming. It's likely that we're going to hit a recession. So, you know, that's going to impact all of us, isn't it? And the ability to kind of to spend, to be confident, to be able to enjoy themselves and to go out. Some young people we do anticipate are going to have family members, friends, or indeed themselves will have positive test results and may have ongoing ill health and may experience death of a loved one during COVID. And I think the latest stats show that Rochdale is one of the boroughs in Greater Manchester that has a kind of peak of cases at the moment as well. So we're just being quite mindful of looking forward and trying to anticipate what's going to happen next. We're doing some bereavement training for our youth workers in case that hits us. We've accessed our own counselling as well for staff and volunteers in case they're affected. And we're looking at putting on lots of positive engagement activities for August and beyond as well. So quite a lot going on, which is, you know, across the board really. I think everybody's really busy. But one big task that I have is about looking at all the guidance and making sure that we can risk assess things in the safest way possible before we do even think about whether we can reopen in any way. So
I'm going to go off tact slightly here, but I don't know if you can hear through my headphones. It's very relative to my question of what's outside my window. But rumour has it that you're undertaking a big construction project at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, as if I wasn't busy enough, right? So, so I might have bombarded lots of people on the call with questions at different building equalities events, or I kind of, you know, sometimes you think, how has this happened? How is this my life currently? You know, so 7 years ago, literally, I was managing the LGBT Centre, and I said to an architect at the time, this porch is really rotten, I think we need a new porch. And then she was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, you could do the new porch. Like, it would be nice if it was a nice porch, you know, it looked pretty smart, because the centre in the 80s was built in a way that nobody could look in or out, and you had to buzz through a security kind of entrance system. Obviously things have changed in the last 30 odd years, but yeah, this kind of porch was quite prohibitive to getting into the building itself. So she said it'd be really nice actually if we made a much better entranceway to this, you know, really kind of lovely, homely LGBT centre. So it's like, yeah, that's a really good idea. So we started doing some consultations with the user groups, And they were like, oh yeah, but, you know, as well as the porch, like, remember that the roof leaks, you know, and every year that weird guttering that we've got, that floods. And do you remember the time that bin lorry smashed into the back of the building, and we're not sure if it's structurally sound anymore? So it was just catalogue of kind of absolute calamity. And then, yeah, we thought, okay, well, if we're going to do a project where we make part of the centre a bit better, why don't we just
do it all?
And for people that
went from porch to a 2-storey building, basically.
Yeah. So people who know the old LGBT Centre on Sydney Street, it looks like a dole office. Yeah, it's really miserable. So you weren't being too mean, Luke. It is a
inconspicuous.
Yeah, exactly. So it needed to be a kind of, didn't draw any attention to itself. It didn't invite any kind of attack or attention. So there's never any signage on it. There was never a letterbox. I put a letterbox in 2017. You know, and we generally had attacks from people over the years here and there. So we were like, okay, what do people want? So yeah, the idea now is that we have, it's no longer an idea, we have demolished that building. So we've moved out and set up a temporary LGBT centre just on the Science Park in Manchester. So Bruntwood currently are our landlady over there, so that's really exciting to be working with Bruntwood. And yeah, we're developing this amazing new building. So it's kind of 2.5 storeys and a roof garden. It's due to be finishing next kind of late spring, early summer. I say that because programs always get delayed, right? And so it should already be open, but we've literally only just demolished. So our contractor are in place. The demolition happened a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, and work is starting. So we're going to triple the size of the original building. All in all, it's a £2.5 million project. And so people on the call will be really familiar with this sector and think, oh, well, that's really tiny. For a small charity and for somebody who's never been involved in capital projects, that's like quite significant for me. So it's 2.5 million. The contract value of the actual build is about just over 1.5. And the rest is the kind of revenue costs for keeping things ticking over. So hopefully this time next year it'll be built. We're going to have lots of extra space for groups to run. We've got a really lovely library. That's part of the build as well, and we've got a roof garden, which is quite rare, I think, for a city centre building. And so we're just off Oxford Road, so we're part of that Oxford Road corridor development right next to Balfour Beatty's really big MECD campus. MMU have got a really big project as well on the same street as us at the moment, so Eric Wright are working with them. So we're working closely with Eric Wright as well to kind of share compounds and things like that. So we've had such generosity of kind of spirit, expertise. You know, we've had a really great board of people who've come together and helped us get this far. So we've had, you know, yourself from Jacobs in the past, we've had Balfour Beatty, Vinci, Bruntwood. So yeah, we've been really, really lucky to have such great interest and support for the build.
And yes, Arup as well is a good shout.
Oh, Arup is, yeah. Oh, do you know, they're worth the weight in gold, Arup. Yeah. Absolutely. I just put Arup and Jewel in one of my reports, actually. Because we had some really great pro bono work from Arup to help with some of our very complicated and technical engineering type stuff. So yeah, thank you, Arup. You've been amazing.
And a couple of corporate bricks as well have been bought. I know Bama bought one and Kira bought one. Yes. And Kira Skint, as people on the call will know, so if they can buy one, your organisation can buy one as well.
Yeah.
And I guess other than buy a brick, and you know, how can organisations help you with this project? You know, you mentioned a library. Are you after books? Can we, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So when the library reopens, we do have a collection of books. So at the moment, Central Library are housing our books for us. So they've been really generous as well with some space. So yeah, they are. So we always take donations of books. We don't have a London library facility. People use it as a reference point. But yeah, we'll be looking for people to come in, help us to move back in. That's going to be one of our biggest things next to April, May time. So moving out in August 2019, we had 3 days of around 50 different corporate volunteers. So people from across the different industries, different sectors gave a day, and we moved everything out. So we'll have to obviously move everything back in. So anybody who's got, you know, a decent license so they can drive a big van, people who are kind of a bit hench and don't mind a bit of heavy lifting. So that kind of thing. The bricks have been really, really popular. So there's an individual brick for £100 and then there's a corporate brick for £1,000. I do have somebody in my back pocket, but if this doesn't come off in July, there is going to be an opportunity to donate for the date stone for the new building. So there's obviously only one of those. And it's currently just gone to the stone carver now, the stonemason. So there's going to be a beautiful Welsh slate date stone on the lintel above the new building door. So that's going to be available for a donation to cover the cost of that date stone. So that might be sent out through the networks in July if my current organisation doesn't confirm soon. The other thing, I guess, Luke, is, sharing stuff on social media. I know that sounds probably, people hear that, it sounds a bit cliche, but the Proud Trust is on. The Proud Trust is on the main social media platforms and also on LinkedIn. So if people use LinkedIn professionally to say that you've been here today and that you've learned about the Proud Trust, or just we occasionally put our updates on there as well. So finding out about us, the more that we do there through LinkedIn. So any way in which people kind of want to engage, really. At the moment, we're slightly limited, obviously, because we're in very bizarre times where nobody can leave the house. But yeah, it'd be really lovely if people would want to connect. And, individually, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn as well, then that's great, because I'll share some updates about the work of the Proud Trust too.
And I guess finally from me, and then I'm going to open it to the floor, so hopefully a couple of questions will come through. How do you see the new LGBT Centre impacting our community and particularly young LGBT plus people?
Well, if you'd have asked me 3 or 4 months ago before this, I'd have said we're tripling the impact. We know how many people we can fit into a building, so we know the demand for the groups. Part of the rationale for having a bigger building was because we had too many groups to fit in. So in the old building, we only had one Sunday a month where there wasn't a group running. The rest of the time, there was something happening there. So that was something that we were really clear and able to say, look, we've got all these groups, and we need to fit them in, and we haven't got enough space, because it's really unique in that it's a dry space, it's fully accessible, it's not in the village, so it's not part of the nighttime economy, it's much more of a kind of community space than a kind of bar or a club. So that would have been my answer 3 or 4 months ago. Now, what we know is that the way in which we support people is going to have to be much more blended as we go forward. So there will be things that we will do in real life in a new building, but the way in which we operate will have to kind of merge virtual and online platforms as well. We've got a library, as I said, and the whole ground floor is given over to a really vibrant community cafe. So that's called Sydney Street Cafe. It's on Sydney Street. We've got a really big activity space on the 2nd floor, and then the top floor at the moment is a vacant space, but it didn't cost us too much to put that additional kind of space on the 3rd level. However, we've only got a very basic fit out within the contract due to the value engineering that we had to go through. But there's also a roof garden there. So there's definitely scope for us to welcome more people in with ideas to deliver activities and support from that space. So lots of really exciting plans for moving forward.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I've just got a question in that asks, do you have ambition to expand across the UK?
I think Proud Trust is a very collaborative organisation. And I think we're very, very clear on what our mission is. If we get approached by somebody from a different part of the country and we know that there's another organisation there, we would always signpost that organisation and say, you should contact the Leicester LGBT Centre or, all sorts in Brighton or what have you. So we do have some networks that we manage and administer that connects people across the country, but we're very much kind of based in Manchester and Greater Manchester at the moment, but as some of our schools work as well moves out across England, and what we tend to do is we tend to try and work with people in their specific geographies, because we're really mindful of the limitations of our local knowledge. We know this area really, really well. We know the people, the networks, the infrastructure, the politics. And I think, it would probably be too competitive and a bit mission drifty if we started to want to tie target other areas of the UK. But that's not to say that if there's a real gap and the most local organisation is unable to do it, then we would look at whether there's a way in which we could work there for the benefit of the young people in that area. On the proudtrust.org website, if people do have particularly younger people in their lives who want to access groups, we've got a youth group finder, so you can just tap in a town or a city or a postcode, and it should throw up the nearest LGBT youth project to that location. So we kind of try to work in a kind of shared and collaborative way generally.
Fab. And then somebody is sent in saying, if somebody was inspired to set something up in their local area, what advice would you give to them?
Oh, that's a really good idea. Well, that's how the Proud Trust started. So, I think, I would probably think about what the need to be, really. So is there a need in that area? Over time, over my experience of about 15 years of doing this work, there does tend to be peaks and troughs in whether young people want to do something where they live, or whether they want a bit more anonymity and they want to move to a bigger city to access things. And, it's the same for me. So I live in Manchester, I live in Levenshulme. I'm quite unlikely to hold my girlfriend's hand in Levenshulme, but if I get to the village, then I will. So I think as well, it's kind of thinking, is something in a specific location needed, and would people access it? And just thinking about your own kind of energies and your own capacity to do something. I used to live in Lancaster, and I used to put on a quarterly queer night, and that was really well attended, but it was only once a quarter. And people used to say it should be every month, and we were saying, well, if it's every month, it gets repetitious and the numbers drop. So I would say kind of start fairly not low level, but kind of just see what the need is, see if you've got people around you in that location that does want to set something up. Could be something as simple, couldn't it? It could be coffee and cake mornings in a particular cafe, or but just know the area and know whether people would want to come, I guess.
No, I'd agree with that in terms of, deprive them a little bit of the event, because then they'll be guaranteed to turn up. And if you give them too much, they sort of get complacent. But I'd also say, I guess, during lockdown, actually, we put on a few events of equality, and the numbers weren't massive, but it was the viewpoint that actually, if those few people got a benefit out of it, then actually it was successful. And we were there for them in lockdown for their sort of physical, mental health. I've not got any more questions in. I guess I've got one final one for people listening, and we're going to record it so people can listen back. That maybe if you could explore maybe some of the volunteer opportunities you have at the moment or in the future, and where they can go for those, so like signposting.
Yeah, of course. So we're always looking for volunteers. At the moment, things have changed slightly as well, and it's gone to more virtual. But in real life, we would always be open to volunteers. And that could be something really simple, like volunteering at a Pride stall, for example, to have lots of information about the Proud Trust and to engage people. So we used to have about 35 Prides we would go to across the region during this Pride season. So it could be something as simple as that. Last year in December, we had a really big LGBT service at Manchester Cathedral. So we had people volunteer there to kind of give out mulled wine and mince pies. And we had a really lovely ally, Mary, one of our volunteers. She's retired, she's in her 60s, she loves the work of the Proud Trust. And she's like, it's okay, Ali, I can do you 104 mince pies by Thursday or whatever. So she baked all of these amazing mince pies, and then I picked them up from her house, took them to the cathedral. And then we had a few other volunteers to give out the orders of service and to take donations for mince pies. So it could be as simple as that. You know that we've got an event coming up. And you say, well, I'm free on that day. Do you want me to be a smiley face as people walk in the door? So it could be that simple. Other things are with the youth groups and things like the mentors that you're proud of, that you're part of, Luke. And that
also proud.
Yeah, very proud. And that just requires a bit more in the way of a process for paperwork, safeguarding considerations, and we would generally want a bit more commitment as well. So that might involve a monthly or weekly commitment for an evening or a weekend, because most of our groups run evenings and weekends as well. And then the last thing is the fundraising stuff. So, you know, if any of you have downloaded Couch to 5K during lockdown, you know, might you want to do something, you know, a challenge for the Proud Trust, or organise a kind of bake sale in your offices. I know that quite a lot of the building equalities companies have done that over previous Prides as well. So yeah, it could be as simple as that really, but do get in touch, connect with us on social media, and if you want to link with me on LinkedIn, I can also share other opportunities as well.
Well, that's it then, I think, Ali. We've got no more questions in. It's been wonderful to catch up with you again and hear about all the wonderful things about the Proud Trust and what you're doing, and the new LGBT Centre, which is exciting. So hopefully in 12 months' time we can get you back and have an update. But yeah,
opening party. I'm hoping we can have a really big opening party, a really big launch. So
and a juice on the terrace.
A juice on the terrace, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, fabulous, and thank you everybody that dialed in and asked a few questions. I will warn you now, when I end the broadcast, it will end abruptly. So I'll just say bye and speak to you all soon.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, bye.